And we're live. Happy Tuesday. Feels like a Monday. Hope everybody had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We are RE Journals, and this is our Breaking Through the Disruption webinar series. Before we start with our educational portion, I got to thank these sponsors. We, as a company, we're planning to do 104 live events this year. We're still planning on getting most of those in, but we've had to pivot to do these webinars, and it's been wonderful for us and wonderful for our customers. We couldn't do it without the support of sponsors. So CCIM, again, thank you. Whipley, Bridgewater, you guys are always with us. We appreciate that. Pulsanelli, however I pronounce your law firm. We're going to have to go over that because I think Jeff says it's wrong when he tells me who it is. And SOIOR, thanks to all of you folks for helping us run this program. This is us, RE Journals. We now have 6 publications across the Midwest in 17 states. Okay, now in Minnesota. So some of you logged on are doing continuing education credits in Minnesota. I know there's a deadline coming up at the end of June, so you all want your CE credits. We have to track your attendance for you to get CE, which means go in the chat room right now, put your name in there. Then I can see that you logged in, and I get a timestamp on everything on that. So it's perfect. 2 times throughout this, I'm going to ask a question of the audience. If you're getting CE, pay attention right now. If you're getting CE, you have to answer that question in the chat room. And I'll remind you of this again. The rest of the audience, I'm going to have you answer in the poll area so that we can get a poll for people that are online and see what the world is thinking. So again, pay attention. That's going to happen twice randomly if you're here for CE. This event has not been approved yet. It's still pending. So assuming we get credit, we'll let you know when we do that. Apparently, the Minnesota Department of Commerce is very busy, and we've kept them busy with lots of events, but that's that. Okay, I'm showing 4 of 5 bars on our server right now. Not a perfect connection, but it's pretty darn good. So the likelihood if there's a connection issue is that it's on your end, not mine. So if you do have a connection, somebody freezes up or you can't hear them talk, hit the red reconnect button at the top of your screen. That's going to be there on whatever device you're on. If that's not working, if you still have issues, log out, log back in again. Sometimes that clears it. Or make sure you're using Google Chrome. That's the best browser that we've found. You can do it on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, any device you have. You can access this event. Go into the email we sent you, click the link, and that should bring it up in whatever you're on. So that chat room that I mentioned, that's to your right. If you're not here for CE purposes, this is a great place to just network with people because now you can see the chat rooms filling up with folks. Feel free to say hi to them. You can chat back and forth. That's also where you're going to ask questions of our panelists. So right here, that chat room area is where you can ask questions. I will flag them with a red Q and make sure that our panelists see them. Polls is a similar thing. When I put a poll up, if you're not here for CE, just answer the poll and then you can minimize that window. If you are here for CE, remember that answer has to go in the chat room where I can get that timestamp on there. Lastly, we have a webinar, YouTube channel. So this webinar and all of our webinars, we have 40 or so that we've done, are online for free to rewatch. So if you want to send this to a colleague, watch it again, you had to log off early, you were having connection issues, you'll be able to find that and watch it in its entirety on our YouTube channel. So here we are, calculating PPP loan forgiveness, not as simple as it seems. And I'm not even sure it seems simple to most folks. So maybe that's a precursor to what we're about to learn. I'm going to do this. I'm going to let these folks introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Jim, though, because I've known Jim for a long time. And what I want to hear from you is tell us what your job is, where you work, but what are you doing? We're in week 9 of this COVID. You've probably been working from home for a long time. What does a day in your life look like? What challenges are you conquering? And what are you looking forward to on reopen? Maybe we'll just touch on that. But the first person I want to introduce, Jim Lockhart. I've known Jim since the 90s. I'll do a brief bio of him because I can. When we worked together at a CPA firm in Minneapolis, he was one of the smartest guys I'd ever met in my life. And he was an attorney and a CPA. And so then I decided that's what I wanted to be. And went to law school and was miserable for 3.5 years. And I owe all of that to Jim Lockhart. But I got to work for him again after law school, and it's been nothing but a pleasure. But so Jim's one of the smartest guys I know, and I know he's tackled this PPP stuff. So I'll let you, Jim, what have you been up to this 9 weeks, and what are you doing now?
What I've been up to is helping our clients work through this time, actually. a lot of them have been wondering about, one, do they qualify? How do they qualify? What can they qualify for? And part about what we're going to cover is kind of what phase are we in with the PPP loans and the EIDL loans, and we're entering the forgiveness stage, and what we're going to, how is that going to play out, and are things going to change? Are they going to be extended? Is the SBA or Congress going to change any of the rules? So actually it's just been doing that, and it's kind of funny when you said, what day is it? I kind of say, I think we're done naming day, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. It's just day. So, but in any event, so it's just kind of, helping our clients through this time.
Busy time.
No, very.
You thought tax season was busy, right? Now you're.
Oh my goodness, so busy.
Well, let's go over to Josh. Josh works with Jim at Whipley. Josh is the guy, the mastermind of some of the PowerPoints I've seen over the last couple of weeks. So Josh, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm here in Chicago, and I help lead our construction real estate tax practice here. So I work closely with Jim, who helps lead our Minneapolis and is also a national resource. I've been really helping our clients both with PPPs, with everything that's in the CARES Act. There's a lot of other income tax, payroll tax, other stuff in there, really helping people understand it and take advantage of it to the extent possible. Still doing regular compliance and consulting work for our clients, and trying to juggle the daddy and mommy daycare at home with my wife during all this as well. So looking forward to some stuff reopening.
Nice. I got to answer a couple questions here in the chat room. Phone number we don't have, so you're going to have to go into your phone and click on that same link, and you'll be able to view it on the web. And then somebody says, Michael Gelfman, today is Blur's Day, Jim. It's Blur's Day.
It's Blur's Day. Well, thank you.
All right, Nick is our favorite banker with our favorite bank, Bridgewater. And again, if you find we're a little too friendly on this webinar, it's because I've known a lot of these people for a long time. But Nick did our PPP loan at RE Journals. So I'm not ashamed to admit it. We got our loan, and we're struggling with the same questions you are. So I may have to ask you for some free advice today. But so Nick, what's up in your world, and how's the last 9 weeks been?
Well, it's been a whirlwind, as it has been for everyone. I think the first part of this work from home endeavor was sort of laden with just general concerns of our clients around the financial health of their business and what the pandemic was doing to that. And we were working with our clients diligently on trying to help them through that. And obviously this PPP process came up fast and furious, and there was a huge lift internally to get a process and workflow stood up so that we could process as many of these as possible. In total, we've worked and closed over 1,000 PPP loans, a little under 200 million worth of PPP dollars that have been funded through that. The volume of that has thankfully slowed over the time of the second round of PPP funding. There was a whole lot of effort early on, but that's since slowed down as most folks have either determined that they don't qualify or are not interested, or have received a PPP loan. So fortunately, the working till 1 a.m. has subsided, and now, like a lot of folks, I'm just dealing with the nuances of working remotely and trying to keep my kids entertained at the same time. So also looking forward to things opening back up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, we're going to go to Sarah Ainsworth. Sarah did the PowerPoint slides we're going to go through, and I got to tell you, she must be one of the most organized attorneys on the planet who can lay stuff out in a logical format. Because I, as a former attorney CPA myself, I know we get buried in the code and we forget to make common sense. So I'm looking forward to what she has to say. But Sarah, what have you been up to these last 9 weeks?
So I'm an attorney at Polsinelli, or I guess they pronounce it Posinelli in Missouri. I'm actually in securities and corporate finance, and my relationship with the SBA comes through small business investment companies. So we started working with the SBIC's portfolio companies at the outset with the emergency loans, and then quickly got up to speed on PPP. So I'd say I've spent most of quarantine either, trying to get my dog not to snore in my lap during webinars, or, handling clients' questions about PPP. I second that things have slowed down a little bit. I think eligibility has become a little bit clearer. And so now it's just working through the forgiveness calculation.
Nice. Last but not least, we got Dan Schmidt from the SBA joining us. I bet the last 9 weeks have been a cakewalk for you.
They pretty much have, yeah. Thank you. I'm a relative newbie at SBA. I spent over 30 years of my working career doing banking, working in commercial lending and all types of lending. I work as a lender relations specialist, so my normal typical job is completely focused on working with lenders and helping them basically become SBA lenders, get signed up, answer questions about particular deals, do general training, that type of thing. Of course, our whole office, I'm in the Minnesota district office, downtown Minneapolis, and we cover the whole state of Minnesota. We have over 400 lenders with lender agreements, and I don't know how many active PPP lenders we have, but I know it's a big number. We have a lot of community lenders spread out through the whole state that are active in SBA, and we signed up many new lenders that hadn't done an SBA loan in literally decades. Nobody there had their ability to sign into our system and some of those things. But we spent a lot of our time, our whole office, completely focused on the Eidl program because that was the only game in town initially. Now our EDS, our economic development team, tries to take care of the Eidl questions that come in, and myself and 2 other LRSs try to focus on the PPP calls that we get from lenders and borrowers. We get a lot of borrower calls that reach us, and a lot of eligibility things that have come up. So we get information in real time at the same pace that the rest of the world does. As you've seen this program rolled out primarily from the U.S. Treasury and things posted up on their website. So it's kind of a mad dash for us to get ahead of things and try to be able to answer questions and catch those IFRs that come out, at 9 o'clock at night and stuff, and be ready the next day. So our staff, our whole office has worked incredibly hard. It's just amazing the dedication and stuff people have shown. And I can't say enough about that.
That's fantastic. I know we want to dig into the stuff here, but before we do that, I want to say a big thank you from everybody that's logged on today to all of you people that are helping us out. It's literally saved, I don't know how many businesses. I couldn't even tell you. Maybe Dan or Nick, you'd have some idea, but it seems like every person I talk to in some business has been negatively affected by COVID. Even things you wouldn't think of have had sales drop off and other issues. And so thank you to all of you who have helped keep small businesses in this country afloat. It's been fantastic. So, well, let's start in. We're going to start with Jim. Jim, I want you to tell us. I got a couple slides here. I'm just going to pop them up on the screen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell us the current state of our PPP.
Well, the information that we have up here is as of May 16th. And like you said, this has been a great program. The SBA's approved more than 4 million PPP loans, totaling more than $500 billion during both rounds of funding. The average loan size during the second round was just over 70,000, and our overall loan size as of May 16th was about $118,000. 2.8 million loans were under 50,000, and that total amount of those loans was about $52 billion. Loans of 2 million or greater was just almost 31,000 for a total of $112 billion. The construction industry, which Josh and I spend a lot of time in, was the largest funding recipient in terms of dollars, approximately $45 billion. And as of May 19th, there was approximately $156 billion left of funds available under the PPP program. There's still, money yet to be loaned, but as we all know, we're moving into the forgiveness phase. The SBA, there was new guidance released through the forgiveness application on Form 3508. There are still some questions that need to be answered. There's some more guidance that's needed. In these slides, we have a couple of those items there, but there's certainly more questions that we have. We certainly welcome the guidance that was provided, and hopefully there is more coming.
So, Jim, if I'm a borrower, should I go out and try to download this Form 3508, or is this something I just need to work with my advisors because it's complicated?
Well, I would say both. I would avail myself of the form, read it, and go over it, and then get with your advisor, whether it's your attorney, your banker, your accountants, or maybe all three, or two of those people. But yes, now is the time to start looking at it, because it does provide some excellent guidance as to how the forgiveness is going to be calculated, although there's still some questions, but it does provide a pretty good roadmap as to how to spend the funds, when the funds need to be spent. So yeah, to both those.
So help me set the stage here for the rest of this event. So when I calculated and got my loan, that was some payroll number from last year or from January, February this year. And I did a calculation 2.5 times that. I got a loan amount.
Yep.
But that's not automatically forgiven, that loan amount, right?
So, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So we're talking about is what portion of it. We all want to maximize that portion of it, because if you don't, you have to repay it. And I know that's in our slides, but I think the idea is just to make sure we know we're maximizing, right?
Yes, absolutely. In theory, it's possible that 100% of the loan can be forgiven, and we certainly hope for most people that is the case. But things change. You reduce your number of full-time employees. You have to reduce and cut salaries. So what happens about that? And the SBA imposed the 75-25% rule, where it's only 25% can be spent on non-payroll items such as rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. So you have to know how what do those items mean. So yeah, so now is the good time to be looking at how do I get all of this forgiven.
Okay, now at the risk of turning the whole rest of the event over to Sarah put together again some really well laid out slides. I'm going to let her start with it, but Jim, Josh, Dan, and Nick, I need you to jump in when you have something to add or a question, so that we can work through this as a group. So I'm going to start the slide for you.
Sarah, if you just let me say one thing first. I just want to say this so you guys are okay with things. I'm not going to be offended or concerned if you want to let people know the challenges that you've run into. This hasn't been an easy process, and it still remains a challenge day to day with some of the steps that we're going through. So you won't hurt my feelings if you let your hair down, whatever you need to do.
Well, I bet we can all stay mostly professional.
Well, I didn't expect anything less.
All right, let's get things up here. Sarah, I'm going to let you just take it away for a minute, and then we'll start probably piping in with questions.
Sure. So, a big part of this for the forgiveness calculation is figuring out the timing of when to spend your funds and also what they can be spent on. So, as was already said, you can spend PPP funds on payroll costs, rent, utilities, and payments on mortgage interest. We really highlight the fact that if you spend it on anything else, so for example, if you spend it on vendor costs, things like that, that's a misuse of funds. So don't do that. And, whenever I'm trying to figure out what constitutes a payroll cost, I go back to the guidance on how to calculate your loan amount, because that sets out what is considered payroll cost for each business. And I think that makes it pretty clear what the SBA will view as a payroll cost, depending on your type of business, because they are different. You know, for a sole proprietor, for example, the maximum loan amount is based on net profit. It doesn't include health insurance, and it doesn't include retirement. And so I think if you have any questions, that's a great resource to see how the SBA thinks about payroll costs. I'd say the one thing that we reiterate constantly is that cash compensation, which in the forgiveness application now includes separation and dismissal allowances and paid leave on top of salary and wages, is capped at $100,000 annualized for that 8-week period. And you cannot use PPP funds for any more than that. That's a misuse of funds. So, you know, if you have extra money left over that you can spend to bring people up, if they make over $100,000, that's great, but make sure that you're making some clear delineation between the two. Because at the end of the day, this is all like a documentation question, it's all a compliance question. And so everything that you do should be documented, and you should do your best to try to maintain, you know, stay in compliance with all the different regulations as they come out.
Let me ask you really quick. You used the term. What was the term you used for funds that aren't for payroll? You said misuse of funds.
Yeah.
Should people be nervous about that? Well, for example, we put our PPP loan in our general bank account, and we pay for all kinds of things every month. Payroll is one of them. But does it just result in non-forgiveness, or are there other penalties that are possible?
There are other penalties that are possible. So that's why whenever you think about what do I do for PPP, the golden rule is documentation. If you have a mixed account, that's okay. But you do need to be able to say, because money is fungible, to be able to say this was PPP money, this was non-PPP money. You really just need to document every single thing, because you don't want to be in a situation where the government's coming after you for misuse of funds, even though it was just a mistake that you didn't document.
That's fair. All right. So what is all included?
So there's utilities, which are pretty basic utilities. The only one that wasn't defined is transportation, so we're not entirely sure what that means. And the loan forgiveness application extended mortgage interest and rent to include real and personal property, which is great. So for example, if you have equipment leases, that would likely fall into this. If you have business car loans, that would likely fall into this. So that was a great addition for everybody and really made it clear. But a reminder, and this has been a hiccup for some people, the contract has to have been in place by February 15th. So if you moved offices on March 1st, unfortunately, that new lease is not going to be covered.
One thing real quick, I want to go back to just talk about the payroll real quick. I think Sarah did kind of allude to some of this. And there's schedules and worksheets within the forgiveness application, which I highly recommend looking at, because it really helps, I think, people understand what actually goes into payroll. But it breaks things down into like multiple different categories. So as Sarah alluded to, the cash compensation per employee or per self-employed or for partner, if they're qualifying, is capped at $100,000 annualized. And so that's actually, if someone if going into the loan calc, my salary was $100,000, then I was eligible for a loan of just over $20,000 because it's 2.5 times the monthly annual amount. Then fast forward to the calculation, and I can only use 8 weeks worth of compensation. So I can only use about 16 grand of compensation to be excluded for payroll, and the rest must be with some of these other qualifying items. And I guess the last point right now, not to get too far into the weeds, is that so cash compensation is capped at $100,000, and this also then alludes to retirement plans and employee health insurance, employer contributions to health insurance. those are broken out on top of the $100,000 capped per employee annualized. So there's some things that will just get capped at 100, but there's additional payments such as your retirement plans and health insurance that will go above the 100,000. So just, I guess the point is, it's important to really know what's makes up these numbers, or your team of CPAs or otherwise, to make sure that you're really setting yourself up for success.
Mm-hmm.
I got to let everybody know the chat room is blowing up with questions, more than we can even answer in an hour. I will, when we're all done, I'll take all these questions and send them out to all the panelists, and they'll have a chance if they want to reach out to you to get those. I also noticed people were asking about the PowerPoint slides. All we're asking is that you send in a request to get a copy of them, and we'll run that through our sponsors, or who made the slides, which is Posinelli and Whipfly. Both have slide sets that they can send out. I'll put those email addresses up on the screen in a little bit. But let's keep trucking here, Sarah. What else we got to add?
Sure. So the big change in the loan forgiveness application was this new alternative covered alternative payroll covered period. And actually my second bullet has changed since I created these slides based on new guidance. So basically what it is, if you have biweekly or more frequent payroll schedule, then you can use the 8-week period that begins on the first day of your first pay period following loan disbursement, rather than the date of loan disbursement. So, the example is you get your funds on a Tuesday, and then your next payroll starts the next Monday. That can be your alternative payroll covered period. They came out with guidance this weekend that said that the alternative payroll covered period only applies to payroll costs. And then the original 8-week period that starts on the date of the disbursement is for all your non-payroll costs. So now you do have to keep track of the 2 different time periods. But it's really kind of to help the administration of having, it more aligned better with your payroll. But you do have to have biweekly or more frequent payroll schedule to take advantage of this new guidance. So we get a lot of questions about prepayments, about pay increases and bonuses. And the overarching answer that we give is you should kind of run your business the way that you normally run your business, to the extent you can in extraordinary circumstances we're in. If you're paying things in ways that you really wouldn't pay them and they're not COVID related, it's likely going to look fishy to a potential auditor. And that's what you need to think about, because the SBA said this weekend that they reserve the right to review any and all loan applications. So it's possible that anyone could be audited. So for prepayments, the SBA has explicitly said prepayments on mortgage obligations are not allowed. So if you kind of extend that, it seems like prepayments in general are not allowed. So we're suggesting no prepayments. With respect to pay increases and bonuses, the SBA said this weekend, and we've said this all along, if you're increasing pay and you're providing bonuses related to hazard, for example, that's okay, but you need to demonstrate, you need to document it. You can't only provide the pay increase to some for hazard and not for others. It needs to be pretty consistent. And with respect to bonuses, we also suggest, if they're not hazard related bonuses, that they really should be on your typical timeline. So if you normally pay bonuses in November, now is probably not the time to be paying them, because that's really not how your business usually functions.
Your comment about running your business the way you normally do is a little bit in conflict with this idea of maximizing funds. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that we could be doing that would be helpful to maximize funds? Is there anything that is within sort of the rules or the concepts?
I mean, the only thing we've really seen are those pay increases or bonuses for hazard pay. If you are having people, work in environments that are a little bit more hazardous given the current state of affairs, that we've seen that be okay. Or if you ask them all to take PTO prior to the receipt of the loan and now you want to pay them back, that's probably okay, but it's not that clear. And again, the biggest issue is that you're still capped. So even if you do provide the bonus or the pay increase or the additional PTO, you're still capped at $100,000 per person. So there is a tension there. I agree. And, there's not always an easy answer.
What about some of the other expenses? So being a former recovering CPA, I think in terms of, are we talking accrual basis or cash basis? So was the expense sort of, was it a May 1st it was due, but I didn't end up being able to pay it until June? Which period does that go in? Is this purely cash basis, or is there some timing with it?
I would love a clear answer on that.
Anybody else have any input on that?
The guidance says that you can take either position, a cash or an accrual basis. So let's just take payroll for an example. It's possible that you get your loan on a Wednesday and you have your first pay period on Friday. You make your first payment. So you could take a cash position on that, and even though that payroll was essentially accrued pre-receiving your loan, because you're paying that amount after you receive the loan, that full amount should be able to be included. What's not 100% clear to me, and maybe Dan will have a little insight on this, is if you can essentially, there's also rules on the tail end for the accrual aspect of things where you can accrue, such as payroll, and as long as you're actually paying it with your next essentially payroll cycle, then you can be including the accrued amount. And same with like costs for utilities and rent and whatnot. So I'd be curious if the SBA or otherwise has issued guidance or thinking about if you can only take one of the approaches, strictly cash or strictly accrual, or if you could take a cash position for the beginning, but then accrue expenses on the tail end.
Get your microphone on there, Dan. There we go.
Okay, sorry. There was a noisy truck outside, and I'm trying to not suffocate in this room, so I had the window open. But the guidance that we got on Friday does talk more about that extended time period for that next payroll and things. I guess just kind of big picture, my answer would be, I don't think you can pick and choose, and say, well, we're going to do this because it's best for payroll and do this because it's best for rent. But that's just off the top of my head. I don't know that's really how the guidance reads. My sense is that a lot of people aren't going to have trouble spending the amount of money just given, how it was structured in the first place based on payroll numbers. The only challenge I think is when you have, you can't get workers back, that people aren't coming back to work and things. And there is some safe harbor in the guidance and things for that. So we definitely need to get that better, delineated and hopefully kind of simplified to get some things out there. I wouldn't be surprised now this week. I know everyone that's probably on this call, as far as the presenters, know about the frequently asked questions, but that is one way that we've gotten some further guidance and some of this stuff boiled down a little bit as they keep adding to the FAQs that are out there. So I don't expect everybody wants to log into the U.S. Treasury every morning and look at the FAQs over their coffee, but that's where stuff tends to get a little bit further rolled out. So we'll look forward to maybe seeing some of that as it pertains to forgiveness. The training and things that we are going to have about forgiveness, we don't have it yet. So there'll be some things that we will get at the SBA level, hopefully not too far behind or behind at all in terms of what people need. So that's probably a long answer, so I'll shut up.
No, I think that's important to note. You said on which website, and how would I get there? For the
U.S. Treasury website, if you go there, there's a gold bar at the top, or red. Sorry, I get SBA and Treasury mixed up. But then you click on that, and it takes you right to the PPP page, and they continue to add all the interim final rules as they're released, and they add to the frequently asked questions. So there's several. There's one document, but you can see from the footnotes, they just keep adding to it.
Yeah, I just posted it in the chat room.
Oh,
I
great.
spend a lot of time on that website, so.
I'm sure you do.
The chat room's just full, and I'm about to fill it up again because I got to do a question for CE purposes. We're blowing through time here real quick, so I want to make it fast. If you're getting CE, go in the chat room right now. It's just a yes or no question. This is an off the wall. I'm gauging people's feelings on COVID-19. If there were a pro baseball game tomorrow with no social distancing, no masks, just fill the stadium, get your brat and beer, and sit down and watch a game, would you go? Yes or no answer. Would you go with just at like we turn back the clock 12 months on the stadium, but in this where we're at today? So I'll be curious to know your answers there. Thanks for doing that. We got to keep moving here, Sarah. I'm going to get back to this maximum forgivable amount. Is this a good spot where we left off?
Yeah, I think that's great. When you're thinking about how to maximize forgiveness, this is what you should be thinking about. It's the sum of your payroll costs, rent, utility payments, and mortgage interest payments during the 8-week period. Another reminder that you have to have 75% be payroll if you want it to be fully forgivable. If your non-payroll is greater than 25%, they'll just forgive less of it. So it behooves you to keep it 75-25. And in fact, one of the certifications that you have to make on the application is that 75% is payroll. So that's really important to bear in mind. Now you can use it on non-payroll, it just won't be forgivable. So I think on the next slide, we get into the reductions. So this very complicated formula that I put together talks about all the different ways that you can have your forgiveness reduced. And it's mainly salary reductions and headcount reductions. We've seen a couple of different safe harbors, which is great. The big one for salary reductions is if someone makes over $100,000 annually or in general, that if you reduce them down, so let's say they made 120 before this and you reduce them down to 90 during the 8-week period, that's not considered a salary reduction. So those people are exempt from your calculation of salary reduction. So that's really important to keep in mind. And then headcount reductions. We got a bunch of different exemptions, which I think are walked through a little bit further. I don't want to speed too quickly with this through this, but I want to know we have a limited time. And the exceptions for the layoffs are pretty important because a lot of people were asking, okay, well, what if, I laid someone off, but I try to rehire them by that June 30th date and they say no? What happens then? Or what happens if they quit or they want to work less hours, or I fired them for cause because they did something that, was really bad? Am I going to get penalized for that? And the SBA has come out and said no. So that's a really important one. Again, it's all about the golden rule of documentation. It's great that you could, you have to show that they did voluntarily resign. They did ask and receive reduction of hours. You did try to rehire them. So try to make sure that all of your conversations with your employees with respect to layoffs or reduced hours are all in writing, because that documentation is required to be maintained for 6 years. So no phone conversations, or if you do, have an email that's sent afterwards. Just make sure you're writing every single thing down, because the layoff reduction is pretty significant because it's a percentage. So for every FTE that gets reduced down, you get proportionally reduced as well in your forgivable amount.
So let me ask you a technical question, and maybe this is Nick. Let's say the person I laid off only made $20,000 a year, but they were 1/5 of my employees, I lose 20% of all my payroll, or I lose their salary portion of mine? Anyone?
I think that was fairly enough. It would just be if you don't rehire that person, it would be a percent reduction. The issue is that even if you do rehire that person, let's say they quit on the first day of your PPP loan was funded, and you don't rehire someone until the very last day of the 8th week, in that example, you might have rehired that person from the FTE count perspective, so you didn't have the percentage reduced, but you didn't incur any payroll costs because you didn't have anybody employed, right? So you are having the difficulty of, if you do have to rehire folks, there is the chance that you then had reduced payroll numbers, just payroll expense, because you didn't have the ability to actually pay anybody.
So I need to pay attention to both my payroll amount and my FTEs.
Correct. And I think that's something that a lot of folks are going to struggle with as they're working through these calculations. That wasn't necessarily something folks were intending to have to, even if though it was included early on in the process, that the FTE requirement, and there's a whole section of the forgiveness application that just helps or lays out the process to calculate what an FTE is. There's a lot of small businesses that are really going to struggle with sorting through that, and it could be a pretty big driver of the amount of forgiveness if somebody loses 2 of their 5 employees, but they were able to make that work and keep their company going, keep the other 3 people paid. Well, you could have 40% of your PPP loan not forgiven because of that.
Interesting. Now, what about if you have a higher payroll or more people? Is there a cap on that? Does it work the other direction? Anyone?
No, I think in that case, you've met your FTE requirement, and then you have your maximum PPP loan was based on what your payroll was previously. So in that case, it would likely just be easier for you to meet the requirements because you had more people on payroll.
And the one thing to keep in mind is that payroll cap per employee is $100,000 annualized. So you can't just pay someone a lot of money and say, oh, I met the payroll requirement. It's going to get capped per individual at a little over $15,000, I think, in the 8-week period. So just kind of keep that in mind.
And that's something I think is interesting to talk through as it relates to self-employed individuals. And we haven't really talked much around that. And it might be something to chat through.
Yeah, for sure.
On the panel or on the listening in that are self-employed. The amount of the loan was based off of 10 weeks of your payroll. So let's just say you were capped out and your loan amount was $20,800. Well, you have to spend that in 8 weeks. So you can't just pay yourself $20,800 in 8 weeks, because then if you annualize that, that would be more than $100,000. So you're limited to how much you can actually pay yourself if you're self-employed during the 8-week window. And then the other 25% of that, so the other of your loan amount then was supposed to go to other eligible expenses. Well, they've come out and said that certain eligible expenses you're not allowed to just pay your home mortgage because you're self-employed and you work out of your house and count that as another eligible expense. So I think there's a structural issue in, Dan had mentioned that people shouldn't have too much trouble in finding things to pay for. I think I would agree with that, but for self-employed individuals, I think there's a likely chance that most of those folks will only ever get 75% of their loan forgiven.
That's interesting. That's rough. I'm going to try to get back into our slides so we can stay on this track here. We have 15 minutes left. I want to get to questions. Yeah, I got to do a CE question too. My mouse is not agreeing with me.
I just want to make a quick
go ahead.
point as well about hourly workers, because that can really hurt your FTE count, depending on what their hours worked are, because it's based on 40 hours. So, if they work significantly reduced hours, that's really going to hurt your FTE count. And, there is kind of a question of, there's this whole thing where if you lay off people between February 15th and April 26th, and then you bring them back by June 30th, that's okay. They basically count as though they weren't laid off. The issue is, what if you have an hourly worker and you have, your FTE count is based on how many hours they worked in a week? We don't really have an answer. The loan forgiveness application says that it's as of June 30th. So there's not really a good way to figure out if an hourly employee would be back up to what their FTE count would be on a particular date, when it's based off of how long they work in a week. So that's an open question that I think a little extra guidance would be helpful on.
You know, I'm going to pivot from our plan a little bit here because it looks like the next few slides are on the process and the documentation. And I think with how many questions we have in the chat room, I'd like to just start getting on those. If you asked a question in the chat room in the first 15 minutes, unfortunately, my chat room only holds so many questions. It's ridiculous, but we've blown through that. I need you to re-ask your question again because I've only got so much capacity apparently for queues. And then I'll start marking these and kind of getting them, try to get them taken care of. Let's start with, what are your thoughts on the eligibility of property management companies in the article the Wall Street Journal just published? Landlords were never meant to get bailout funds was the title. Anybody know anything about that?
That is actually in the standard operating procedures for the 7A loan program. It does say that landlords are not eligible for the 7A program, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. So under original 7A rules, they would not be eligible. I think it falls under a passive business. So, you know, I think it varies very much business by business. And if you're just holding property, I think it's likely that it would be ineligible, but to the extent that you're providing management services, I think you can argue that you're not just a passive business. But again, that's an argument that would need to be made. And so if that's the business that you're in, we really strongly suggest documenting why you think that you're not a passive business.
Here's another one, Rhonda Jenkins. I think this is just a documentation one, but we have an employee who went on maternity leave unpaid about a week after a PPP and will not be back until after the 8 weeks. Unpaid leave question.
I don't know how FMLA plays into this. We haven't seen any guidance of it. You know, if they're still in the payroll, then it's not really a layoff. It's unpaid leave. That's normal. There's not, I haven't seen anything. I don't know if you all have about how FMLA plays into PPP.
I love the crickets I can hear. No, I'm not taking that one. Okay, Leslie North. This one, she accidentally marked private. Please address PPP forgiveness with the EIDL loan. Received the PPP, but now have also been approved for EIDL, but hasn't signed yet. How do the two work together, and what do you recommend?
The PPP loan itself, the two are separate loans. The forgiveness is affected by the advance you get under the Eidl program, because that doesn't have to be repaid. So if you get a $5,000 advance, they'll just take $5,000 off your forgiveness right off the top.
Okay, I'm going through here. Again, re-ask your question if you've asked it earlier. Sue Tam, if I receive the loan on May 5th and the first day of my payroll period is May 4th, with the payroll being May 15th, can I go back to the 4th and include that pay period in the 8-week, or do I start on the 18th? I think this is going back to what you were talking about, Josh. How do I deal with these accrual versus cash payment?
Right. Yeah. You can either take the cash method, and when you make the payment almost 2 weeks later, obviously that one day would be included. In general, if you were taking the accrual method, you technically wouldn't include that day, but you could take the alternative method that they gave us for payroll and not start your payroll dollar tracking until the first day of your next payroll period. So you could defer it until like 2 weeks later if you wanted to. But there's a couple options there.
And what I would maybe suggest with that is, and this is just maybe a blanket statement as it relates to this, you have a period of time in which you can incur costs and spend dollars from your PPP loan. We've all said you want to keep good records, but I think what most people will want to do is wait until they, read through the forgiveness application so you have an idea about what you can spend it on, but then wait through the end, because like what Josh mentioned, you may not know what date you're going to want to choose until the 8 weeks have passed. You've been able to look at all your records and you say, well, shoot, I was actually able to hire somebody on the 18th. And so it made more sense for you to use the 8 week period starting on the 18th and not go back to the 1st, because then you had more payroll dollars to spend. So the answers are to a lot of these questions are complicated, and in a lot of cases it really depends on everybody's unique situation. So folks are going to really want to think about how can their exact situation be fit within this forgiveness structure, and what makes the most sense for them individually. And there isn't going to be a blanket answer that's going to work for everyone. Everyone's business is going to look a little different.
Mm-hmm. And I would recommend either personally looking through the application or your trusted business advisors, whoever is going to be helping you make the decisions, like now, not after the 8-week period's over. Because with a lot of these things, there's 2 or 3 different alternatives that you can pick from that may set you up more favorably or less favorably. So I think the more that you can understand now, and there's probably like 5 or 6 different things that have these different options, the more that you can understand now, just the better you're going to set yourself up for success upon loan forgiveness time.
Josh, I'm glad you said that, but now I'm going to put you on the spot. You said 5 or 6 things that you need to think about now, today, before the clock runs out on this. Can you list off just remind me of the most important things we need to think about?
I mean, I think it's just kind of looking through and all the different options that you have for like the full-time employee equivalents. There's a couple of different options of how you calculate that, making sure that you kind of nailed that down. Knowing for, I think Sarah had gone through, it's a employee by employee calculation, but if you reduce an employee's payroll by more than 25%, then some of you won't be able to forgive 100% of that payroll. However, if at any point in time during 2019, this is just an example, that employee was deemed to have been paid over $100,000 annualized, which could be like in a 2-week period, they got a bonus. And that bonus, when you take that into account with their normal payroll and you annualize it, it puts them over $100,000. So knowing that, then anyone that had over $100,000 annualized, they're not included in this kind of calculation for the 75% payroll requirement. So kind of there's a lot of different things in here, but just knowing these different items and thinking about it really can help set you up to make sure that you're going to be forgiven.
I'm going to try to get some free advice here and throw a curveball at you. Our 401k plan requires that we fund our employer portion. I think it's by the end of the calendar year. But when we had been funding it with each paycheck, our 3% match or 5% match, I don't remember what the number is. But we put that on hold when COVID hit because we're trying to conserve cash during this downturn. It's being accrued monthly. Would we be able to, pay that in July, or do we need to make sure we get that payment done in April, May, June?
I would lean towards paying it. I think the rules for the accrual that it has to get paid like in the next period.
Okay.
And I don't know 100% what that means for the 401k match. Or the employer portion of it. But yeah, I would recommend making the period or shortly after to try to get those included.
That'll be an interesting line to draw. Okay.
And I don't know if Dan has anything else on that.
I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about health insurance premiums because there's a couple questions on here. Lori Klein's the first one. I know PPP funds can be used for health insurance premiums. What about life and disability? Are those part of it?
I don't think so.
The application says employee health insurance. I can see if there's more of a definition, but I don't believe so either.
Okay, and then Joan Sherwood, this one's tough. What if you're self-insured as a company? Can they use premium equivalent rates, or are they out of luck? Or if they used actual costs, that would be a challenge as well. These are hard questions.
I'm going to pass on that one.
They're hitting us. All right, I'm going to keep moving then. Oh, Maria Frias Lopez asked the same question I did. Sounds like if your 401k match, you better get it paid. Sorry, I'm just looking through the questions here. I've been paying attention to what you all been saying and not looking at questions. Okay, we are a daycare. Have been closed since March 20th. Unlikely to reopen until August 4th at 50% capacity. Well, there you go, Josh. At some point, you're going to get your daycare back. I don't know when. We received our PPP loan on April 29th. Can alternative pay period start August 4th?
No. It has
That's
to be
not
the
gonna,
next one.
yeah. Go ahead, Sarah.
It has to be the next one after the date of disbursement if you have a biweekly or more frequent. So if you got it in April, the next one's probably either the next week or beginning of May.
And I like this question by Matthew Esper. Sorry if I hack your last names. I'm Norwegian. If it's not Johnson or Swanson, I can't say it. If payroll costs exceeded 75%, let's say 85%, I think there's a lot of confusion around this. There is no penalty, right? That's okay to have 85% payroll and 15% other stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay, Eric Werner, do you have to put the EIDL number on the PPP forgiveness worksheet if you plan on not taking the EIDL? Interesting. Oh, David Eina. Oh, unless you want to take that.
I was just going to say it.
Document everything, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sure that, tax ID numbers are going to alert that. So I would put it on there. I mean, if you're saying you're not going to take an advance, so your forgiveness shouldn't be reduced, they'll know you didn't get an advance, so that should be fine. We had people concerned that had received advances and then realizing they could apply for PPP and wanted to pay back their advance. And I guess I couldn't understand the excitement about it. It's like, just use that to pay on your PPP loan. It's at the end, it's the same thing. So maybe there's some major tax implications, but since the average advance is $3,200, I don't think that's really something that should keep people up at night.
It's with fewer hoops to comply with because it's a grant. So I would err on taking those funds versus rolling the dice on filling out the forgiveness worksheet correctly.
That's a good point. David Einolf, how would you document self-employed salary?
The self-employed forgiveness is actually in the original IFR that dealt with self-employeds, and I didn't see it, called out in the notice we got just on Friday, but basically what it said was the forgiveness is the same thing as what you qualified for. So it's the same numbers. It's from your 2019 tax information. So you don't have to cut yourself a paycheck because you didn't before. So you wouldn't start doing it now.
It's 1:59. I gotta ask my second CE question. If you're in the chat room and you're getting CE just in the state of Minnesota, put in the chat room real quick. If you're still working from home, put in home. If you're going into the office, put in office. That's our final CE question. It is 1:59. I'm going to keep going for another few minutes here, getting through some of these questions. Are all of you panelists okay if we go about 10 minutes over?
Sure.
I'm going to have to sign off.
Okay.
Yeah, I will too, actually.
And Sarah. Okay, we got a couple people to stick around here. I'll just keep going through questions for 10 more minutes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists that have to sign off. I think we have to continue to do these events. This is ridiculous, the number of questions we have in the chat room. So let's just, we'll all work together to try to get you all answers. Send us, I sent you the login email. Send back to me or to Alan in our office a request for slides and we'll get them. I'm going to throw up Jim and Sarah's contact here just real quick. Email this guy if you want slides from Whipfleet, which are very good. And let me get Sarah's. Just hold tight. Right there. There's your other emails. You can inundate her inbox with questions and ask for slides as well. They'll help you out. Okay. Real quick poll results. You'll like this, and this is moving in a direction for us. I've been asking similar questions for 2 months now. Would you go to a ball game with no social distancing and a large crowd? 28% of the people said yes. So there's the fear level seems to be coming back. 71% still would go, and I understand that as well. Okay, the three of you to the left, I'm only going to make you stay 9 more minutes, but let's just hit a couple more of these.
Hey, before you ask another question, could I just,
go ahead.
I just want to add a quick comment. And I'm not saying this because I don't think it's complicated and there shouldn't be a lot of questions, but the PPP program was put together in about 2 weeks and then rolled out within another 7 days or whatever it was after the bill was signed. And really the intention was, and again, put yourself back in your mindset from March 15th. The thinking was this is going to be a real quick thing. We're going to help people keep their staffs together, and we're going to have a way for people to pay their employees for a couple weeks, or excuse me, a couple months, as it turns out. And then things, will click back in. And so for a lot of these scenarios where people are having to, dig real deep in the weeds on questions and stuff, and again, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just kind of trying to go back to where did we start with? What was the information we knew at that time that got us to this program? If you could keep that in context a little bit. I mean, there's going to be situations that people might have gotten a loan and they didn't use it for the purposes of the program and they got to pay it back. But in theory, they should still have the money because there was only 4 purposes that they could use it for. So I'm just putting that out there just as a frame of the situation and understanding there's a lot more injury than what affects your rent or your payroll and things. So I'm also understanding that. So I wanted to kind of put that context out there.
What I'd add to that too is I know that there are a lot of competing sort of viewpoints throughout Congress as to how the program could be modified to make it easier for various industries like restaurants or salons and such to use the funds that were allocated to them. So I think we don't know yet how or when that would come together. But what I do know is that the application, even on the front end, went through maybe 3 or 4 iterations of the application before it was finalized. I would not be surprised to see the forgiveness application be adjusted, between the first iteration and what ends up being the final iteration. So I think a lot of the frustrations and questions that people have, they are bubbling their way to the SBA and the Treasury to help try to streamline the process as best as possible. But as we all know, with just general tax returns, tax returns are long and complicated, and a lot of people need help from an advisor to complete their tax returns accurately. So it should be viewed the same way that you're going to have good records, you're going to have to take some time, and you may need some help from somebody who's really in the weeds on it to help you do it correctly.
Okay, 6 minutes. Would you 3 gentlemen be okay walking through the self-employed thing one more time? That seems to be the bulk of the questions. So I got my loan amount. What expenses count? What expenses don't count? Do it rent? In this case, it says from Mark Kahn, rent and utilities are paid to an external landlord. Does it work if I was counting them on my Schedule C? Can you walk through some of those things real quick?
Dan, did you have a different viewpoint of that than you had mentioned that the full amount would be the amount that's eligible for forgiveness? I just don't understand how somebody could spend, because if you annualize 8 weeks worth of salary, it would size out higher than 100,000 because you size if somebody had $100,000 salary and you size it at 10 weeks of that $100,000 salary, but you only have 8 weeks to spend the money. So by virtue of that, you would only have 8 weeks worth of salary then that you could pay yourself. The rest would then need to be spent on rent or other types of things. That's my understanding of it.
Right, and that'd be consistent with a business that has a payroll, you know.
Right. For a self-employed individual, like let's say a commercial real estate broker or a real estate agent or someone who works out of their home, the guidance that I've seen is that home expenses you cannot use the same way that you could in terms of deducting depreciation for your home office. So I think my understanding is there's going to be some difficulty in some of those folks finding the additional expenses outside of payroll.
I think that's true. You know, just the same way as if you don't have a mortgage, so you don't have any mortgage interest to pay, you
Right.
know. So the business that has no debt or a lot less debt on their building is penalized because of that. Well, that's not the intent, but that's the end result. So, you know, yeah, you might not get 100% of the loan forgiven, but again, the loan was to make up for a portion of that lost income in the concept that you weren't going to generate any income.
And I think the thing that you had mentioned is what we've been advising our PPP recipients as well, is that, you know, if you have the funds, like let's say in a segregated account, and you have the ability then, and you've only been spending those on payroll, let's say for a self-employed individual, well, you should have the funds left over to then either use those to pay off the remaining balance of the PPP funds. I guess the question I would have is, could they just stretch that out and then use it as a 1% loan? They could keep the funds and use that to pay themselves over the next couple of weeks, couple of months.
Well, that's what made me nervous about what Sarah said when she said, you know, funds that were illegal, not illegal use of funds. She used a different term, I think. But what happened? Can you use that remaining money on anything as long as you pay it back?
You know, there's the regulation. Okay, what's the approved funds? But there's also the reality. Is SBA going to be auditing every single loan file? If you're talking about a self-employed deal that there's $2,000 that's amortized over 18 months, I'm pretty sure nobody from SBA is going to spend a lot of time with those. There isn't that many people that work here in the first place.
Yeah. And that's where I do think there will be additional guidance on some of that stuff that comes out to help folks understand what they can and can't do. And you know, that doesn't answer these questions today, but it as we've gone through this process, more and more information comes out, you know, daily and weekly. So folks just need to continue to try to, you know, attend things like this, do their research online, look at that Treasury website. There is consistent information that's brought forward, and then work with your advisors. And you know, whether it's Bridgewater Bank or another lender that you worked with, you know, your lenders and your CPAs and your attorneys are going to be good contacts for up-to-date information on trying to help folks, you know, navigate this pretty complex process.
I'm putting these slides up again. I'm getting requests for Jim and Sarah's email addresses. They're just going to get bombarded. I'm sure Jim will call me tomorrow and thank me.
Jim will forward them.
He'll just auto forward all his emails to his compatriot.
I'm going to get the emails. You might as well put my email address up there.
Yeah,
I should have. Sorry, Josh.
Okay.
Well, I've known Jim longer. We just met this year, so
No,
we'll have to become closer friends. All right. Well, okay. And we got 1 minute left. We can't really answer a whole lot more questions. Does anybody have any parting thoughts they want to give? Since this is being recorded, people can watch this that have dropped off.
I just also want to add, you know, again, I'm in Minnesota in the Minnesota district office, but you know, there's 62, I believe, district offices in the United States. So there's resources out there for everybody. On our district website, we have a page just for the COVID-19 programs and links. And on our page, there's a lot of links to SBA partners, the Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, Women's Business Centers, and all the other partners that are out there to help with programs. And also other local programs, county, city, state things. All that stuff is out there with more information. So I just want to emphasize, you know, SBA has you know, done everything possible to implement these programs, but there are other things out there too, other tools, and we want to be a resource to help you find them. And I think across the whole country. Every district office is doing the same thing.
Well, Dan, can you do me a favor and email those links to me or Katie, who set the call up here with you, and we'll send them out to all the viewers. So you mentioned a couple of things. The SBA has their website has some resources, and I think I believe you said Treasury. I can't recall what the other one was, but the FAQs. Would love to have those in people's hands. It'd be great.
Sure. Yep.
Josh, any parting thoughts?
I mean, nothing new. Just probably just reiterating. I mean, there's a very good chance that a lot of people on this can qualify for full PPP loan forgiveness. It's just a matter of really understanding the details and planning, and either looking at it yourself or working with your CPAs or other trusted business advisors to make sure that you kind of understand all the numbers behind this. And yeah, we're helping a lot of our clients with this now. So if there are people on here that need help with the forgiveness aspect of things, definitely feel free to reach out to us.
This probably goes without saying, but Nick being our banker, I'm telling you, Nick, right now, we will have Whipfley and Posinelli look at our, and look, this is right in my wheelhouse. This is in my background. I'm still going to have somebody that really knows it take a look, because I don't want to make a mistake, and I want to maximize it too. So I think we want to get back to have that conversation now, right? Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I mean, I think the more, well, and as we've seen in this call, I mean, there's varying opinions even amongst this group around how some of this stuff works. So I think you will get different answers from different people at times. But yeah, I mean, consult the folks that are around you that you trust to help you. I think the spirit of this was that they were trying to get funds into the hands of people who needed them, so that they could spend the funds on payroll and other types of eligible expenses. I don't think the SBA, this is just my opinion, obviously, but I don't think they're going to come, hunting folks down because you didn't include one check in your supporting documentation. I think people need to understand that they're being reasonable. They're trying to make the right decision with the information that they have at the time. Obviously, just fraud and big things like that will be prosecuted, I would assume. But folks that are trying to comply to their best of their abilities, they're trying to do their best. I don't think the SBA is going to throw the book at them. For us to work with your lender and on their process for the forgiveness. We're in the process right now of trying to build out the workflow internally for our 1,000+ PPP applicants to work through and get us the information that is relevant. We're trying to make that process as simple as possible, but obviously there's a lot of nuances to this. Are you using the date that the loan was funded for your 8-week period? Are you using some date after that? I mean, there's a lot of variation to these that makes it difficult for us to automate a workflow that a company could follow step by step and submit the information that they need and calculate their PPP forgiveness amount. But work with your lender. They're going to have their process, and every lender's process is going to be a little bit different as to what they want and how they want people to interact with them. So, don't just go printing out that forgiveness application, filling it out by hand, and mailing it to your lender's home office. I mean, that's probably going to be time not well spent for you, because I assume they're going to have a different way for you to do it.
Yeah, well, we gotta get off. This is great info, Nick. I assume I love that they might be a little flexible, or however you want to look at it. But man, do not drop the ball on this, because forgiveness versus paying it back is a big difference. So, absolutely, my final advice is get it done and get it done right, because this has helped us survive as small businesses. But doing it right is going to be imperative to maximizing. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We for sure are going to have to do this again. So I look forward to talking with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.